Reverend Rachel Christensen. I'm the minister at Paint Branch, and I'm glad you're here with us this morning. We are going to begin our service now with our music director, David Chapman, playing Plant a Radish from the Fantasticks by Harvey Schmidt. David?
Thank you, David. Welcome to Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. We acknowledge that the land on which our church stands is a part of the ancestral grounds of the Piscataway people. I am John Barr, one of the worship associates who plans services in collaboration with church staff. I am happy you chose to be with us today. If you are using Zoom this morning, please run your cursor around the perimeter of your screen, find the microphone icon, and be sure to remain muted throughout the service so we can hear all the speakers and David's piano clearly. You may also find the option for switching between gallery view and speaker view. I believe you will want to choose speaker view as I do, so that you may get to see us in full size, as it were. You should also be aware that by clicking on the bubble icon, you will open up the chat screen where you can read timely messages, particularly from our Assistant Church Administrator, Bill Brown. Right now, I invite you, if you haven't already done so, to type into chat how many people are viewing from your screen. Please type 1 if it's just you. Later in the service, you will be invited to use the chat feature to post your joys and sorrows. At the end of today's service, you will have the option of joining a small chat group in a breakout room when the service is over by staying on. I have a couple of announcements. Auction season is upon us. You can already browse the auction catalog and bid, see the article in the Continuum, or contact Tricia Most or Kathy Yu for more information. And did you know that Paint Branch has its own YouTube channel? All our online services from the past 2 months are posted there. Go to YouTube and search for Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church, and you will find them. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And welcome to this role. John is a new worship associate, and this is his first service that he'll be leading as a solo practitioner. And we're grateful for you agreeing to do that. I am the Reverend Rachel Christensen. I'm minister at Paint Branch, and I'm glad you are here with us this morning. I'm enjoying the chill in the air. It looked like it was cold enough this morning. There could even be frost, although I didn't actually see any. probably in some spots people had frost, but I do enjoy the turning of the air, the seasons, the way the air feels fresh, and moving into a new stage of the year. It has been a tumultuous week. There was first the release of Mr. Trump's tax returns, the nomination of a new Supreme Court justice, the debates between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump, and now Mr. Trump and several others in the White House and the Senate have tested positive for COVID. No one should have to suffer with COVID-19. May they each recover and thrive and do what they can to prevent the spread of this deadly virus. This morning, I will read from our hymnal readings a piece by Rudolf Nemser, The Bread We Share. The bread we share this day is sacred. Grain, gift of the earth, gives life. The friendships we share this day is sacred. All gatherings when people meet and touch and celebrate life. The laughter we share this day is sacred. Joy and sorrow that rise from love are springs of life. The stillness we share this day is sacred. In this peace is a haven for the spirit which nurtures life. For bread, for friends, for joy and sorrow, for the comfort of quietness, let us ever be grateful and caring. And now James Alexander will light our chalice. James?
Good morning, everyone. I will now light the chalice. Please join me in saying our chalice lighting words. We light the chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. Encendamos este caliz para celebrar el Unitarismo Universalismo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigas, del amor del corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Let us join our hearts and minds in a time of prayer and meditation. As we gather in community, we carry with us our pain and our joy. Sometimes sharing these joys and sorrows in community can help. You are now welcome to share your written joys and sorrows by typing them into the chat bar. During the intonation, we will hear David Chapman play Food, Glorious Food from Oliver by Lionel Barr. In this moment of quiet, may our hearts open to hope and healing. May our minds open to peace and possibility. May we hold all of these and one another in love and kindness, so that this congregation may be a source of strength and comfort, courage and hope in the days and weeks ahead.
I was muted. One of those mistakes that I have made more than once doing these worship services. So I'll start again. Thank you, John and David, for the music. I'm wondering if you have ever felt like there was one food that seemed to be the best food of all, that you could eat just that and feel satisfied. Eat that all day long. Maybe it was bacon or ice cream, French fries, M&Ms. I think many of us have a story like that. When I was a kid, I loved butter, real butter. So much so that one year I asked for butter for my birthday. At that time, you could buy a block of butter in our town from the butcher. I remember sitting in the kitchen, scraping off curls of butter and eating it. Have you ever done something like that? I don't remember the part where I must have gotten sick of it, or put it away in the refrigerator for another day, or maybe even forgotten about it and let it get used for ordinary stuff for the family. But I do remember being allowed to indulge in that silliness and just enjoy it. I still love the taste of butter. So this next video about cookies made me laugh. I hope you enjoy it.
Now what starts with the letter C? Cookie starts with C. Let's think of other things that starts with C. Who cares about the other things? C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Oh, cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Oh, C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Oh, cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Hey, you know what? A round cookie with one bite out of it looks like a C. A round donut with one bite out of it also looks like a C. But it is not as good as a cookie. Oh, the moon sometimes looks like a C, but you can't eat that. So, C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Yeah, C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. C is for cookie. That's good enough for me. Oh, cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Yeah! Cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C. Oh boy! Cookie, cookie, cookie starts with C.
I enjoy food. I enjoy thinking about it. I enjoy reading about it. I enjoy shopping for it, cooking it, talking about it, and eating it. I may be an unrecognized and inadequate disciple of cooks and authors Alton Brown and Salman Nosrat. I learned the joy of cooking and eating at my father's knee, but I didn't really understand why food was so important until I grasped that food is life, and that providing food is a tangible expression of caring, sharing food is a means of sharing life. Thinking about how and when we eat together provides me with insights into relationship, who we are expected to share food with, and whom we do and don't share food with, I think is very revealing about ourselves. Now, I eat breakfast, mostly to provide something to balance my morning coffee. My wife and I will be sitting at our computers in a bleary haze of residual sleep, checking the weather and the news. Coffee is the only thing shared, but it is a common resource for the climb into the new day. At work, lunch is remarkably similar to lunch in primary school. The same group of people we were just with, assembled into a different room, eating food that requires little work, but still sharing a meal, if not sharing food. But that's a worthy declaration of personal relationship. Now, pre-COVID, I had managed to make eating at one's desk uncool in my department, and managed to keep lunchtime conversation off of work topics. I'm still rather proud of that. But I don't know if that will survive in the normal to come. I just hope so. Now, dinner is really where I can properly engage with food and the experience of it on weekdays. Before, with all the work from home, I got home first. So I cooked, which I enjoy, so everybody won. I get to cook for my wife, and that is better than cooking for just me. When I used to just cook for myself, I would cook the same sort of meals, but it wasn't shared. So it wasn't as good, even if there were leftovers. Now, weekend meals get their own category. Growing up, weekends were the days my father cooked. And since he left for work before we woke up and got home well after child's dinner time, weekends were really the only opportunity we had for that. But when he cooked, it was a celebration. Brunch was and is a particular favorite. Omelets or fried eggs, ham or bacon, toast or pancakes. This is how I experienced the glow of being together as a family after a frantic week. Now, I'm not going to tell you you have to cook to express care with food. I am a great believer in the benefits of specialization and professionalization, and I consider the thoughtful selection of a restaurant and the deployment of a credit card to be just as real an expression of care as cooking from scratch, with the added bonus that you don't have to do the dishes. But do share your meals. I cooked for myself for many years, and it's not the same.
Thank you, John. At my house, we have a persimmon tree. We planted it in the front yard a year or so ago, 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. And it produces tomato-sized, flattish orange fruits, sort of squashed looking. They are delicious. We got fruit from it last year, but we had to get tutored as to what to do with them. When we finally figured it out, we learned that they were terrific. This year, we were so hopeful. We saw lots of blooms on the tree, but the truth is we have no fruits. We saw the squirrels picking them, and they managed to pick every one, I suppose, between the squirrels and the deer, long before the tree even thought about those fruits getting big. But it turns out there is also a very large persimmon tree across the street. It is tall, like a shade tree. It makes small, round fruits. You know, the one in our yard, the fruits are like this big, and across the street, they're more like this, like a walnut. The squirrels have been all over that tree, but there's still an abundance. The squirrels hang upside down from the small branches, eating the fruit. So, one day I picked one of the persimmons that was pink. I peeled off the skin and ate a little bit of it, but it made my mouth feel like it was full of cotton. Just dried out my lips and tongue, and, well, nope. The fruits are astringent. Wikipedia says that astringency is the dry, puckering mouthfeel caused by the tannins in unripe fruits, and it lets the fruit mature by deterring eating. I would say that describes it pretty well. But several times this fall, in fact, even again this morning, I've seen a woman stopping across the street and picking up something from the grass. One day I went out and said hello and learned that she was picking up the persimmons. But aren't they just puckery, I said? She said that the ripe ones that have fallen and are really soft and quite good. You just have to peel off the skin. She says, I looked it up on YouTube. I washed them and I put them in a jar with some water and sugar. After about 2 months, they make alcohol. And then 2 months after that, they turn into vinegar. It's good for the body. I will pour out a little vinegar and add a little water and drink it every day. It helps with digestion. In my culture, people like that. Here, not so much. Not so much liking of the sour vinegar things. What is your culture? I asked. Korea, she said. Her name is Kyung. So I asked Kyung for 1 or 2 of the fruits she's picked up. Peeling the skin off, they are delicious. I'm amazed. Later, I go out and pick up some of the persimmons myself, right off the ground. They are very soft and troublesome to peel, but very tasty. By the time I get them peeled, it's kind of a smushy mess in my hand, and each one probably has half a dozen seeds in it. I wonder about making a jam with them and maybe not to have to peel them. I cook some in a little water and sugar and press out the fruit pulp and throw away the skins and the seeds. Then I cooked it down into a jam, but it was terrible. Astringent. You may have been able to guess that, some of you. Darn it. I wonder if the vinegar will be astringent when it's done. I've seen Kyung several times and we have talked. She's now passed on half a dozen jars of fermenting persimmons to friends, and they are all busy making alcohol and then vinegar on their counters. I think about how Korean food is one of the foods that I haven't really learned to understand or to appreciate. Many pickles, many sour things, kimchi, just like Kyung says. Many ways to preserve foods by souring and fermenting and pickling. A culture of food preparation to have those foods available all year long. People from everywhere have brought foods and seeds with them from away. We brought with us tastes of home, of comfort, of nourishment. Maybe we didn't know what would be available or didn't want to have to figure out how to make our meals without those things. Spices, seeds, techniques, tools, methods for using and preserving foods so that we could use up the abundance and have them for later in the year. In the US, people canned and pickled foods, and in colder areas might have a dry cellar, a root cellar, for storage of foods through the winter. And even with that, by springtime, many of the roots were really not so good. Potatoes and turnips might be soft or even buggy. If you have ever grown cabbages, you may know that they tend to all ripen at once. And you can only use so many cabbages at a time. So I think that every culture that grows cabbages has a way to preserve them. Maybe making sauerkraut or kimchi or other form of pickling, mixed with other vegetables or herbs or flavors to sour and preserve. You can make sauerkraut or kimchi on your countertop. And I understand you can bury a jar in the ground. It helps to keep it at an even temperature, keeps it from freezing or spoiling by being too hot. Add different spices or foods, and it changes the results. I remember friends who've done lots of preserving, jars and jars of tomatoes or peaches, jams and jellies, green beans, even salmon or other meats, tools to make your food available all year. Now, people tell me that in New Orleans, it's all about the food, bringing something to share, being handed something to taste, and then jumping in to cook together. In other places, it's about creating a beautiful table and then all sitting down to it at once. Or noisy, rowdy sharing of platters, of drink, of tastes, all before coronavirus for sure. Or a practice of trying to make sure everybody has something they can eat that's tasty and wonderful and they can enjoy, and creating a welcome, generous place of eating and sharing. In some households, it's about abundance and generosity, tables laden with foods, way more than people could eat, and talking and laughing during the sharing of the food, inviting people to try things, to eat, stay, tell stories. With so many different cultures here and our exposure to a world of different foods, it has led to what's called fusion cooking. Chefs have brought together flavors and methods from disparate cultures, creating new combinations, new flavors, new appreciation of the ways they might go together. Sometimes we might experience the awkward dinners when conversations just did not happen, when there's an underlying anger or judgment or stressful relationships, when what needed to be said just could not be said. So our culture around food is hard to characterize. Most of us have found ourselves, if we have a partner, in something of a cross-cultural relationship. We each grow up with different senses of the right way to cook something. Margaret McClellan tells me she grew up with mostly Pennsylvania Dutch food and simple foods from Eastern Canada. But her husband, Ali, is Egyptian. So she learned to cook Middle Eastern foods, but she also learned to cook Filipino chicken from a Filipino friend and authentic Mexican food from when she lived in Texas, also Indian curries and other foods from around the world. I think that tells a story of most of us. So much of food is that, the courage or curiosity or necessity to just try something, combining different ingredients, substitute one thing for another, trying Thai food and then adding some of those flavors to your next soup. Be adventurous and welcoming and open to sharing and trying. For most of us, providing and sharing food is an act of love. Making and presenting food is a gift to those you serve or those you love, and sharing it, appreciating it, is a way of loving people back. Food is caring. Food is sharing, is experimenting, is sampling across cultures, tastes, families. It comes to us from across the generations, across the country, across the world. I know that I carry forward recipes from my mother that she got from her mother or her grandmother. But for all too many people this year, food is worry and anxiety. About 11% of the country experiences food anxiety, meaning that sometimes over the course of a year, they don't have enough to eat or to feed their family. This year in the pandemic, that number has exploded to about 29%, almost 3 times the usual number of people are having food anxiety. In August, according to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, 10% of adults reported that over the last 7 days, their household sometimes or often didn't have enough to eat. This compares to 3.7% of adults reporting in 2019 that their household had not enough to eat, sometimes or often in the previous 12 months, from 3.7 to 10%. The burden is disproportionately borne by those who are Black at 19% and Latinx at 17%. Once again, the racist policies that have led to less home ownership, less wealth, less educational qualifications have resulted in less resiliency. SNAP benefits, sometimes called food stamps, have been made more available, and states have increased SNAP benefits to the maximum allowable amount for all families. However, this approach means that those who were already receiving the maximum benefit, nearly 40% of all recipients, those with the lowest incomes and the lowest resiliency, received no increase at all. The benefits that were given completely ignored extra need, extra worry from those who were least able to bear it. Charitable food programs have stepped in by increasing food distribution, food banks, food boxes. And recently there was a distribution of USDA food boxes. On Friday this week, they were expecting 524 boxes of food at 31 pounds each for distribution at High Point High School. The organization Feeding America estimates that there will be a need for 17 billion pounds of charitable food in the coming year, up from 5 billion pounds last year. This is over 3 times. It's hard to get my head around those numbers, but the increases are unmistakable. They equate it to a shortfall of 6 to 8 billion meals. By every measure, there are 2 or 3 times as many people experiencing hunger since COVID and challenged by not having enough to feed their households. $646 per month is the maximum benefit for a family of 4. So what is the culture around food when there is not enough to go around? Parents go without so that their children can eat. People learn how to make the food they do have for their meals. There's often an underlying assumption that people may not know how to make do with less, that they don't spend their money wisely, that they are foolish and wasteful. It is an astonishing element of arrogance and minimizing the reality of the difficulty of trying to make it. Matthew Desmond, in his book, Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City, notes that everything is stacked against them, from housing to food purchases, to access to care, to education, to holding a job. Instead of blaming those who are finding themselves without enough to eat, let's work to help people have enough to eat. I know many of you are doing just that. Because as John says, food is life. Providing food is a tangible expression of caring. Sharing food is a means of sharing life. As we think about access to food, those of us who have the ability to have food, let's also think about how to get more food to more people in need and to address and change the policies that contribute to this terrible lack of access and inadequate provisions. May it be so. Please join me now in singing hymn number 1010.
Thank you, Dave. Our church depends on the financial support of our members and friends. Please give as generously as you are able. The church's offering can be received as indicated in the chat bar, or you can make online donations through Breeze or by text. And as always, you can still mail your donations directly to the church office. The offertory music today is by Lennon and McCartney, Strawberry Fields Forever.
Thank you, David. I'm grateful for the chance to be thinking about food and tradition. In our family, we have this phrase about nostalgia foods, remembering foods that I suppose were comfort foods in our house. Mostly they center around cookies. So we have a series of cookies that we remember as part of what we grew up with, like Lorna Doones and windmill cookies and maybe a zebra cake. I know all of you have stories like that, some piece of comfort food remembering from the houses that you grew up in. May we work towards this issue of a sufficient food for people. Later in the month, we will have a special collection for community ministries, which is the successor, I believe, of the community cafe work that we did for many years at the Hyattsville Church. We'll hear more about that later in the month. May you give generously when that is our special collection. Please join now together in singing Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life, hymn number 123. The words will be shown on the screen.
I will now extinguish the chalice. Everyone have a great Sunday.